In July 1995, a mid-level bank executive in New York sat down and wrote a 30-page letter to his company's president in Japan. In it, he confessed to hiding $1.1 billion in trading losses. For 11 years, almost nobody noticed. This is the story of Toshihide Iguchi, the man who ran his own private bank inside a bank, and the Japanese institution that got thrown out of the United States for helping him hide it. Iguchi came to the U.S. from Japan as a teenager, studied psychology in Missouri, married an American woman, and in 1976 landed a job at Daiwa Bank's New York branch. He started in the securities custody department, the unglamorous side of banking that settles trades, holds the paperwork, and keeps the books straight. He was good at it, diligent, quiet, the kind of employee managers describe as loyal. By the early 1980s, Daiwa promoted him into trading U.S. Treasury bonds directly. And here's the detail that made everything else possible. Nobody took the back office job away from him when they gave him the trading desk. Iguchi was now the trader placing the bets and the record keeper checking his own homework, two jobs that are supposed to watch each other, sitting inside one person. In 1983, Iguchi lost $70,000 on a bad trade. Small by Wall Street standards, but Iguchi panicked. Rather than report it, he sold some of the bank's bonds out of a custody account to cover the hole, then forged the paperwork so it looked routine. He told himself he'd trade his way back to even and nobody would ever know. It worked, so he did it again. For years, this became Iguchi's second job. Trade, lose, quietly sell off real securities from the bank's accounts or its clients' accounts to plug the gap and forge a confirmation slip to make it disappear. It was slow, unglamorous, repetitive work, hundreds of small forgeries a year, each one small enough not to raise eyebrows on its own. His real trading numbers were falling apart. His fake numbers looked fine. Meanwhile, Japanese investment into U.S. securities was booming, and Iguchi's division kept growing right alongside it, which only made his position look more essential, not more suspicious. And because he was the one filing the paperwork with regulators, there was no second set of eyes to catch the difference. In July 1989, Iguchi and two junior traders made an enormous $3 billion bet on Treasury bonds. It went wrong fast, losing $350 million almost overnight. Most people in his position would have been finished. Instead, Iguchi did what he always did. He sold off more securities to cover it, forged more slips, and kept going. By now, his unit was quietly producing over half of the New York branch's reported profits on paper. Federal and state bank examiners audited Daiwa's New York branch multiple times during these years. Iguchi kept the real trade confirmations, the ones that would have exposed everything, locked away and simply never volunteered them. Nobody demanded to see inside that room. For over a decade, one of the largest financial frauds in American history sat, quite literally, in a filing cabinet nobody opened. In November 1993, Daiwa's own U.S. lawyers pushed the bank to come partly clean with regulators about irregularities in how its trading and record-keeping were separated. Daiwa admitted just enough to draw a sharp warning from the Fed and New York banking regulators about, quote, misrepresentations made to examiners. But the full picture, the $1.1 billion hole, stayed buried. The warning came and went. Iguchi kept trading and losing. By 1995, Japan's financial system was already under enormous strain from a real estate crash, and Iguchi later said he feared his hidden losses could tip something bigger into crisis. After 11 years of what he called fear, guilt, and deception, he wrote his confession. 30 pages, dated July 13, 1995, addressed directly to Daiwa's president. He laid out exactly how he'd done it and how much was gone. Here's where the story turns from one man's fraud into a corporate cover-up. Daiwa's head office acknowledged Iguchi's letter, and 2 days later, went ahead with a previously planned $500 million stock offering without telling investors what they now knew. The day after that, senior management allegedly told Iguchi to keep concealing the losses until November. And when the New York branch filed its next financial statement with the Federal Reserve, the $1.1 billion hole still wasn't in it. The truth finally reached regulators in August, when Daiwa informed Japan's Ministry of Finance about the losses, and, according to American officials, sat on that information for weeks before telling U.S. regulators too. On September 26, 1995, FBI agents arrested Iguchi in New York. U.S. Attorney Mary Jo White called it one of the largest trading losses in history, unprecedented in scale. Prosecutors said Iguchi had made an astonishing 30,000 unauthorized transactions over 11 years just to keep the illusion running. Federal regulators didn't stop at Iguchi. Weeks later, they ordered Daiwa Bank itself to shut down its entire U.S. banking operation. In February 1996, Daiwa Bank pleaded guilty to 16 federal fraud charges and paid $340 million. At the time, one of the largest fines ever imposed on a financial institution in the United States. The bank's president resigned to take responsibility. Iguchi pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 4 years in prison and a $2 million fine. The New York branch manager who allegedly told him to keep hiding the losses pleaded guilty too. It's worth pausing on the timing. Just months before Iguchi's confession, a 28-year-old trader named Nick Leeson had already sunk Barings Bank with hidden derivatives losses. Regulators worldwide were already asking hard questions about rogue traders, and yet Daiwa's own head office, fully aware of its own version of the same problem, chose delay and denial anyway. Daiwa survived. The $1.1 billion loss was painful, but represented less than 10% of its capital. It wasn't going to collapse the way Barings did, but it was permanently barred from operating as a bank on American soil, closed multiple overseas offices, and faced a shareholder lawsuit back in Japan that would eventually see former directors held personally liable for hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. Decades later, in interviews, Iguchi maintained he never personally profited from any of it, that he was trying, however delusionally, to trade his way back to zero the entire time. Whether that makes him a fraud or merely the most persistent bad gambler in banking history is still debated. What's not debated is this. For 11 years, the only thing standing between Daiwa Bank and $1.1 billion in losses was a filing cabinet nobody thought to open. Separating who makes the trade from who checks the trade isn't bureaucratic red tape. It's the entire point. Daiwa learned that the hard way and paid $340 million in tuition. If you want more stories of the frauds that quietly rewired how banking gets regulated, subscribe. There's a new one every week.